Okay, we're going to get ready to do the fill-in work on this. Again, I'm working directly off the points of the needle. I'm not sticking that whole needle into the skin. Now we're starting to do what they call shading. I'm going in, I'm setting the ink in, and then I'm feathering the ink out. So I get more of what they call like an airbrush effect. With a 4-needle shader, again, it will allow you to get into the tight areas and still get that airbrush effect on the tattoo. Very important to not overwork the skin area. If you'll notice, I try to go back in, work the area twice, leave it. If you go in there too many times, you'll actually chew the skin tissue up. Now, if you'll look at my machine just before I'm going to touch it, if you'll come in close, you can see, you see the blot of ink that's on the outer side here? There's like a drop that is accumulated on the outside. You want to make sure. That's why you'll see me do this sometimes, because if you go on the skin with that, sometimes you'll pick up a good sized puddle. And as you see, it's nice and square now. You're not going to get that. You're not going to get that big puddling. Something to watch for. If you'll notice, I'm going into this corner at a little bit of an angle, like this. I'm not taking the machine and doing this with it, because if you go in this motion, you'll actually cut the skin wide open. If you'll notice, what I'm doing is I'm doing this. A little bit of a circular motion, but enough where I'm not coming up in there and going straight up with it. Okay, now I'm going to stop for a second. I'm going to point something out to you here about working ink onto the skin. If during your process you're in a very tight area like this, a lot of times what I'll do is I'll go back and I'll spray the tissue. If you spray the tissue and you leave the liquid on the surface, you can actually go back through and check what is actually into the skin and what isn't, and we'll show you different spots that you need to put a little touch of ink into. Notice I'm picking up when I'm shading. In, pick it up. When shading, try to get in as close as you can to the line before you shade out, without actually going into the line. That will make your black much more even. If you'll notice, when I'm shading the black, I'm actually taking the machine and doing this with it in this motion, because remember, this is a rounder object and you have to give it some depth coming around. You can't run straight out with it because it'll be very flat. If you'll notice the angle of my hand, if you look at my fingers are not like they were when I outlined, because when I outlined, I was like this. This, I have to be up so I can see where the ink is flowing. I'm up above the design. All right, we're going to do some shading. We're going to shade from the bottom here. And we're going to do it again in a circular form. Get more of a rounding effect on the design. I've switched to way I've placed my hand on the skin, because being back here is too difficult at this time. So now I'm going to move to this type here, but you can spread your fingers and still get the tissue plenty tight enough to get the correct penetration. Okay, now we're going to get in a little bit heavier black, still in the shading effect, but a little bit heavier up into these areas here, which will be primarily filled in a little bit more solid and then airbrushed out.